Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Simplify Your Life Summit. I am your host, Justin Crosscarry, and I am joined by the Biohacking M.D, Dr. Venus Ramos. Dr. Venus, thank you so much for being on here. I appreciate it.
I am certainly excited to be here, so thank you for inviting me.
Yes, of course. And so not only are you a fitness trainer, but an MD, and also an advocate. You know, you're on a health advocate on different shows such as The Doctors. Where did this all start? Have you always been passionate about health, or was it something that triggered you? Where did this all come about?
Well, regarding general health, I think going into medicine and becoming a physician, I can't even remember when I decided I wanted to become a doctor. I think something like being on a preschool playground and falling down, scraping my knee, and someone putting a Band-Aid on it and thinking, I want to do that. I mean, I've just always wanted to be a doctor. But as time passed, I soon realized some of the actual benefits of being a doctor and learning more about it. So health has always been something that intrigued me intellectually, science-wise, but definitely the altruistic side of me. I took a personality quiz not too long ago, and I realized I am a true altruist. Hey!
That works.
So fantastic. But regarding the fitness aspect, that actually came to be much more of a passion and a drive actually during medical school. So while I was in medical school at the University of Miami, I happened to be hanging out on South Beach with my friends. Yes, we still hang out on South Beach, even though we're in medical school. But we were at a restaurant on Ocean Drive, and there happened to be a TV on. It was kind of a sports bar type of atmosphere. And we saw on ESPN the Fitness America pageant. So this is a competition where you have women competing in almost routines where it's like a combination of aerobics and dance and gymnastics, where they're competing against each other in these amazing athletic routines. And I was just inspired. It was just like crazy, the things that these people were able to do. And a friend of mine said, "Hey, I've been seeing you working out in the med school gym. You should try that." And I said, "Sure, why not?" I tend to be one of those people when somebody challenges me, I go for it. So I just went online. Back then it was primarily Yahoo. So I went on Yahoo. I looked up how to get involved in this Fitness America competition, and that was it. I was hooked. I became a fitness competitor, and I competed for about 20 years. So it wasn't too long ago that I stopped competing.
And that's been your passion. That's awesome.
Yeah. So the prevention side of health and staying fit has always been something that I've loved to pursue and advocate as well.
Yes. And they're both important, right? They go hand in hand, that exercise and also what you're putting in your body and how you're treating it. I do want to talk on, I know most of our talk, we will talk about stress, but I'd love just touching on that with you being a doctor and also a fitness expert. What are some simple things that people who are, you know, because I think they go, for me, it's a passion as well, exercising. And when you become passionate about exercising, you also become passionate about what you're putting in your body for the most part. What are some simple things that you see people missing out on when it comes to really trying to get to their body to the optimal health while they're exercising, whether it be sometimes over-exercising or sometimes doing something before they're even ready for it?
Well, I think there's just so much information out there in terms of what to eat and how to exercise and when you should be doing each and how much of everything you should be doing, whether it's the food aspect or the exercise aspect. I think there's so much information out there that it can be really overwhelming at times. And sometimes I think that you get caught up in, I need to be as healthy as possible. And I don't fault anyone for this. It's great to want to be as healthy as possible and want to try to do it all. But when it comes to figuring out your portion sizes and counting your calories and then counting how many minutes you're spending in cardio and how much you're doing in strength training, and then I see some people almost become obsessive with trying to stay on top of things. And behind it all, there's this overlayer of stress. And I really think that that's a key aspect that you really need to take a look at, because stress in itself can cause so many different changes in your body that you can actually undo some of the good you're trying to do by eating healthier and exercising more and incorporating more physical activity into your life. You can actually start undoing some of the good you're trying to do when you're not taking that into account, the aspect of stress and what that can do. So stressing about getting the right portion sizes and exactly how many minutes you're supposed to spend on that treadmill, stressing about it is not a good thing either.
That's something that we don't think about, right? And especially, like you said, inundated with so much information, so many different fads that are out there, that we're always, and you can find, at least in my opinion, I've learned that you can almost find something negative about everything you put in your body, and then you can stress yourself out about that. So when it comes to stress, how does that really affect our body? Like, what is going on inside when we do stress out?
Well, stress in itself is not necessarily a bad thing. There are stressors that are going to occur in life. And our body was actually designed to deal with that stress. When a stress comes, your body is designed to react with a higher blood pressure. It's designed to react with a higher heart rate. That is because if you look back across history, man, when they saw their stress coming into their lives, usually it was in the form of a predator, like a wild bear or some sort of wild animal. They always talk about the saber-toothed tiger, which, go back in history, may or may not have truly existed. But in any case, you have these predators coming at you, and stress occur. That's a stress on your body. So you are designed to have an elevated heart rate and an elevated blood pressure, because that pushes your blood towards your muscles and your brain, so that you can actually do the right thing at that moment to survive. So our bodies are designed to survive. That's either fight that predator off or run away. So in either case, you need plenty of blood going to your muscles and your brain in order to take care of that particular situation. The exact fight or flight response that a lot of you out there probably are familiar with. But as time has passed and we've developed in our society, those type of stressors are not what we as humans necessarily deal with on a regular basis. Our stresses are dealing with traffic, or arguing with members of our family or coworkers, or dealing with deadlines that we put upon ourselves, or stressing about what diet we're doing at the moment in time. So these are things that are causing stress on our lives, but it's still causing the exact same effects on our body, like the higher cortisol levels, which drive up your blood pressure and your heart rate, along with the other stress hormones like adrenaline.
And so how is that so much different from when we had the stressors back, hundreds, thousands of years ago versus the stressors that we have now? Why is that different, and why is that causing issues now?
Well, the thing is, we don't necessarily do what we're supposed to do when our body has these reactions, because the stress, our body's interpretation of the stress is still the same, whether we have a predator trying to attack us, or whether we're facing traffic on our local freeway. We're still responding with the exact same hormone. So in that sense, the stress is the same as our body's interpreting it, but we're not necessarily doing the same things that we did to handle that stress. Back then, when we were dealing with predators, humans were running away or fighting it off. That's physical activity. So you're actually doing something with that elevated heart rate and that elevated blood pressure. And then that physical activity actually makes changes in your body so that your cortisol level doesn't stay high, and you don't have these long-term effects on the body. So cortisol is actually designed to help you. Cortisol is supposed to do the things like make your blood go to your muscles and go to your brain so you can have the right stress response. Your cortisol level is actually also designed to help you heal wounds and fight off infection. So these are all good things that your cortisol is supposed to help you do. But it's when you're not doing what biology designed cortisol to do in terms of the flight or fight response, then you start suffering the long-term effects of the elevated cortisol level.
Yeah, so because I can imagine, you know, back when we were getting chased by a saber-tooth tiger or some kind of predator, whatever it was the cortisol would raise and then it would come back down, right? Life
exactly.
was much more simple, you know. And now, correct me if I'm wrong, the issue really isn't that we're still having the same stress response. The issue is that it's traffic, it's a phone call, it's when we get home, it's the bills we have to pay, and it's just like constantly like this.
Exactly.
So what are some ways? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, exactly. The stresses that we have back then, we didn't have a predator coming at you every 10 seconds, but we are constantly being bombarded by these stresses in our lives, so that maintains and keeps that cortisol level elevated. And when I say long-term effects, the effects are very, very widespread. And I'm not just going to talk about the elevated heart rate and the elevated blood pressure, which can cause cardiac problems if you keep that elevated for over the long term. Definitely can cause stresses on your heart and further chronic medical problems, cardiac-wise, heart-wise. But there's also things like the effect that higher cortisol levels have on your brain. You may start to develop issues concerning your mood, with depression and anxiety. You can have problems with your memory. The higher cortisol levels can actually disrupt your hippocampus. That's the part of your brain where you encode memories. So it can actually disrupt being able to encode those memories. So when you're stressed out too much and your cortisol levels are high, perhaps you've done something like walk into a room and then can't remember why you just walked in there. Those types of things. These are the types
smiling
of...
because I have.
Exactly. These are the kinds of memory issues that you can have when your cortisol level is remaining high over the long term. And I always say it's basically almost like a head to toe type of whole body effect that cortisol can have. It can affect your digestion, moving down lower from your head. It can cause poor digestion issues. I already mentioned how cortisol can be helpful because it can improve your immune system, boost your immune system so that it can help with wounds, healing wounds and fighting off infection. But when you're chronically stressed, you've overworked your immune system, and that can actually lead to decreased immunity. So stress can actually, you may have even encountered this yourself. When you're stressed out, you may feel like you're maybe more susceptible to colds and flu type of syndromes. So that is something that you've probably experienced. Many people watching this may have already experienced the decreased immunity that can happen when you're stressed. There's also issues with weight gain that can occur. And again, this is not just a thing, one of those things where you say, oh, I'm stressed out, oh, I'm going to eat, and that's just something that you've heard of. It's actually biologically tied that when your cortisol levels are high, your body starts craving carbohydrates and fatty foods, so weight gain can occur. The direct response to cortisol is to be able to fight or flee. So not only do you have blood rushing to your muscles and your brain, you also have increased blood sugar so that you actually have the energy to do that. And again, when you have increased blood sugar long term, you can develop insulin resistance and perhaps even the development of diabetes. So now we're getting into more chronic conditions that you can be developing. So again, you're seeing this whole body effect. And I haven't even mentioned the effect on the sex hormones where you can have problems with fertility or even decreased libido because of effects on the balance of your sex hormones. This is tied to where sex hormones come from. They come from a base hormone called pregnenolone. And when your cortisol, which also comes from pregnenolone, is constantly coming from that base hormone. So you're constantly taking away from the pregnenolone and creating more and more cortisol because you have to keep that cortisol level up because of all that stress, then you're not leaving a whole lot left to create some of the sex hormones that are required. So this actually creates an imbalance of the different sex hormones in your body, and that can lead to libido problems. So truly a head to toe, whole body effect of cortisol.
Yeah. And it's like, and then you're going to get stressed out because of those things that the stress has caused. And it's like a vicious cycle, right?
Exactly.
And it also has a big effect on our gut microbiome, right? I would love for you to touch a little bit more on that. How you're talking about with digestion, if there's times of stress, I have recognized that I won't be hungry, I'll lose my appetite. So how important is that, and what is that doing with our gut microbiome?
Well, oftentimes you'll talk about cortisol, the higher cortisol levels and the stress that you're feeling I mentioned how it can be tied to mood and it can be tied to your gut. And this is really because so much of your immune system is located in your gut. Many of the cells of your immune system are actually located in your gut. And a lot of your serotonin in your body, which is a key hormone related to mood, is created in your gut. So all of these things are integrally tied to your gut and the ability to fight off infections in order to keep your microbiome healthy, in a healthy balance, where when you're disrupting your cortisol levels, then you're disrupting your gut, which can disrupt your immune system, which can disrupt your serotonin levels. So it's all very tied together.
And that serotonin, for those of you who don't know, is the happiness chemical, right?
Exactly.
So that's definitely something you want to have as much of as possible, and you get to have as much as possible. So just that in itself is a simple fix. So you definitely, Dr. Venus, you definitely got me thinking. Now I know what stress is doing, and I know the repercussions of it. I like to look at our body as, I like to relate it to like a car, how we have those check engine lights. Oh, you have high blood pressure? That's a check engine light. So what are some ways that we can get rid of that check engine light, reduce that stress, and have that come down?
Well, fortunately, stress management and trying to make sure that your cortisol levels stay in check, that they don't get out of hand. Because again, you do want the correct cortisol response, but you don't want it elevated over the long term. It doesn't actually take an hour-long meditation or yoga session. So many people that I run into say, I don't have time for that stress management stuff. I can't spend hours in meditation. You don't have to do that, not at all. There are things that you can do, and innately, and just even in our society, we kind of know this, but there's actually science behind it. So I'm here just to kind of show you that the science is true. It's there to back up these things that people tell you to do. It really works. When people tell you to take some deep breaths and relax, that's exactly what you should be doing for your stress management. And it takes such a few minutes of your time, hardly any time at all, to take 10 slow, deep breaths each day. Just sometime in the middle of your day, take 10 slow, deep breaths. That in itself can help lower your cortisol level. And one little trick to that is if you spend a little more time in your exhale compared to your inhale. So perhaps you inhale for about 3 seconds and you give your exhale a good long 6 seconds. And you can actually spend a lot more seconds than that. But sometimes people say, what? Exhale for 10 seconds? What are you talking about? So start with just a few seconds so you can start to kind of key into slowing down your breathing. And then you can kind of expand and increase your exhale a little bit longer even. So that is scientifically proven to actually lower your cortisol levels when you do something simple like 10 slow, deep breaths. So that's super simple to fit into your life. That's just one thing.
That's just one thing. And I would love to know, it's one thing to know what's working, but I'd love to know what's going on when you are breathing. Because I think once people understand it, I know for myself, when I understand like what's going on, then I'm like, oh, that makes sense. And then I'm more apt to do that. So I want to make sure that, you know, these viewers are doing that. So what, if you can really quickly, what's going on when you're taking deep breaths? Why is that so important? It's so simple.
Well, when you're taking nice, long, deep breaths, a lot of different things happen. Of course, you have the exchange of the oxygen and the release of the carbon dioxide. That's happening at the level of your blood vessels and your lungs. So you have to give it time for that exchange to happen. But another way of thinking about it is your nervous system, because there are two types of systems, essentially. There's actually a lot going on there, but I'm going to keep it simple. Two types of the nervous system that you can think about. There's the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. And your parasympathetic nervous system is responsible for things in your body, a couple of things in your body, and you can actually think of it as rest and digest. So the parasympathetic nervous system is responsible for kind of relaxing the body so it can digest the food. And this is a little bit more active when you're exhaling. So that's why I say spend a lot more time on your exhale, because this is when your parasympathetic nervous system is acting. And then you can kind of balance out the sympathetic nervous system, which is more in tune with doing things like increasing your heart rate and your blood pressure. So when you're stressed out with the sympathetic nervous system, spend more time in your exhale so that parasympathetic nervous system, the resting part of your nervous system, can actually relax things.
I love it. I'm finding myself right now really remembering how to breathe. You know, sometimes we forget how to do that. What are some other simple ways other than just breathing that we can really support our body in reducing that?
Well, one of the simplest things you can do is do what your cortisol was meant to do, exercise. You don't have to run away from a predator, but do a little bit of exercise. Take a nice little walk outside for about 20 minutes. That's a great thing that you can do to actually lower your cortisol level, because that was what your body was designed to do. Another wonderful thing, I think this is probably one of the more fun things to do, is laugh. Laughter helps lower your cortisol level. So tell a joke or read a book of jokes if you need a few jokes to make you laugh.
Yeah.
Or just joking among friends, or even if you want to watch a little comedy show. Just do something to make yourself laugh. Give yourself that gift of laughter along with a lower cortisol level. That's an easy one.
Yeah. Hop on YouTube, put on a little Kevin Hart and get some giggles going. I love it.
Super quick way of lowering your cortisol level, and it's a fun one. And there are a few other things you can do. Turning on some music that makes you feel good. Music definitely can help lower your cortisol level, as long as it's not music that makes you angry. Make sure that it's just music that makes you feel good. And then here's a great one. Human connection helps lower your cortisol levels. So giving someone a hug can actually help lower your cortisol levels. So connecting with the people that you care about, having a really good conversation, And even, and I hate to say this about being on your devices, but even if you have a little Facebook conversation with friends, that is still some human connection happening there. So that's actually been shown to help lower cortisol levels.
That's awesome. Plenty of tips. Are there, so we talked about, lowering that cortisol. When are times that cortisol actually benefits us?
Well, as I had mentioned before, if you are going to respond to your stress, you do need the higher cortisol level in order to increase your heart rate, in order to increase your blood pressure. So you have the adrenaline pumping those things up so that you can direct it to your muscles and direct it to your brain. So in those high stress moments when you're thinking about having to do something, you're able to do it. So in that respect, it can be beneficial to you. And with regards to healing wounds, cortisol is definitely required to help start the healing process, and helping to fight off infection. Again, these are all based on initial elevations of cortisol, and it's when those cortisol levels stay elevated that all of the disadvantages, all of those risks that I described become a problem.
Yeah. And I'd love to ask you, this is kind of a random question I'm going to shoot at you. With everything going on right now with viruses, the immunity, how important is it when it comes to the stress levels and how much you're stressing out about maybe not getting something or protecting your body versus like how much more beneficial is it to be aware of that stress and keep that low compared to like saying getting medicine? Is there like a lot more of a benefit of keeping that stress low rather than just kind of dealing with it with medication or what have you?
Everything is always going to be tied. So you may have certain supplements that you're trying to take to help boost your immunity. I'll say one thing, that these supplements like vitamin D or vitamin C, some of the very basic ones that can help boost your immunity, unless you're already taking them on a regular basis, it's not going to do a whole lot for you should you catch things like cold and flu viruses, which coronavirus is. So at least the type of virus that it is. So if you are concerned about taking anything to help boost your immunity, it's something that you should start doing now, because it's not going to actually prevent you from getting a cold virus or a coronavirus, but it will help decrease the severity of your symptoms, which for those who do get it, to keep it from progressing to really severe problems. Of course, having less severe symptoms is going to be helpful. And it's also going to decrease the time that you have it. It's been shown to be tied to having decreased duration of your symptoms. So having decreased severity and decreased duration is definitely going to be helpful, but you need to already be taking it. So it's not something that will help cure or help shorten a course if you don't have it already in your system. So get boosted now, if that's anything that you're worried about. But again, it's a balance, because as you're boosting your immune system, things like vitamin C are required to get your immune system going. But if your immune system is already weakened because of elevated cortisol levels, then you're kind of taking away from that boost that you were trying to give it. So it definitely needs to be balanced, where you're giving your immune system the appropriate boost. You're staying aware of things that you should be doing to keep yourself healthy, but you're also maintaining a healthy level of cortisol by keeping it in check through appropriate stress management techniques, that you're staying aware and carrying precautions out as you should, but also maintaining healthy cortisol levels through techniques similar to what I've talked about. Very, very difficult to be a human sometimes.
Right.
But
It definitely is.
because it's such a balancing act. But the great thing is it can be balanced in a very simple way.
It can, and being aware of that is huge. Before I let you go, you are the Biohacking M.D. What are some simple biohacking tips that you have for just anyone? I know this is another question I'm just throwing out here, but taking the most advantage of having you on here, which I do appreciate. What are some simple body hacking tips that you have for any of the viewers or listeners that can boost their immune system or just help with overall health?
Well, one thing that, again, it's super, super easy, and some people will say that's cheating because that's not really a biohack, but it is. Because again, it has an effect on so many aspects of your health and your body, and that's trying to get at least 7.5 hours. That's the big number that I've come up with, 7.5 hours of sleep each night. The reason why I say 7.5 hours is that seems to be the key number where you have the right amount of rest so that your body goes into that mode where it can recover and regenerate for the next day. It helps keep your appetite hormones. I didn't go too much into that, but that's ghrelin and leptin. Those hormones stay in balance when you get at least 7.5 hours of sleep, so you're not wanting to eat too much the next day, and it just keeps your body and your growth hormone also at the appropriate level so that you can continue to function optimally. So staying around 7.5 hours, that can also help boost your immunity and help keep your cortisol levels down. So sleep really, as you can see, because I just named a whole lot of things,
Yeah.
can really help you optimize your health.
I think that's a biohacking tip that everyone's going to be excited about.
Everyone, get your sleep now. 7.5
Yes.
hours. That's what I'm recommending, at least.
Perfect. You heard it here from Dr. Ramos. I appreciate you so much for being on here. And I know you have a free gift as well for all the listeners and viewers. So if you can speak about that.
Oh, absolutely. Again, for those who want a few little health hacks, some biohacking tips that can actually fit in their lifestyle, I have the 15-minute Better Body Blueprint. So in 15 minutes, you can do so much to actually optimize how your body is functioning. Just 15 minutes a day. That's the biggest thing that I get from people, that they don't have time for all this stuff that they're supposed to do, eating this and exercising that, and they just don't have time. So I'm just going to suggest things that you can add to your body and your life in 15 minutes a day so that you can actually help boost your health. 15 minutes, why not, right?
Everyone has 15 minutes, right?
Yeah, you can give me 15 minutes.
Especially for their health. And where can everyone find you if they're looking to find you on social media or online?
Well, you can find me a couple different places on Instagram. Just look me up, Doc Venus, DOCVENUS. On Facebook, it's just Dr. Venus. You spell it out, DOCTORVENUS. Same thing for the website, Dr. Venus, spell it out, .com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on here, Dr. Venus. I greatly appreciate it. And I know our viewers are at least going to have some amazing tips when it comes to lowering that cortisol and really reducing their stress, but also a lot of great knowledge on why it is so important. So I loved you sharing that. It is so vital for us and our bodies and how we're working these days. So thank you again for your time. I greatly appreciate it.
Certainly. I would come back anytime.
Have a great one.